committees have been in Congress since the early 19th century. By the 1820s and 30s, Congress starts to form committees to handle work, meaning small groups that are given power over certain issues, such as taxation, over war. But it's really in the 20th century that the committee system becomes the central way in which both the House and Senate worked. I mean, committee chairmen were the focus of power, and they didn't really have to listen to their party leaders after the 1920s and 30s.
And now, how did they become the focus of power? What changed? What happened? What rules were passed that made them these very powerful people?
Part of it was the natural weakening of parties in American politics. Parties were much stronger in the 19th century than they had been in the mid-20th century, at least through today. So as parties weakened, other sources of power stepped in to fill the vacuum.
Now,
in
let me
Congress,
see if I can understand.
Committee chairs were important.
Let me see. Let me be a lawyer here. Make sure I understand it exactly. You're saying that when parties were more important, they exercised influence, and you had some people in the center of the party at its head, or very powerful in the congressional elements of the party. So what the party decided is what went, because the party was so influential, and what individual Congress committee chairman might have thought was not of no never mind, or certainly of less consequence. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So the head of a party in the 19th century, or today, in the in the 2000s, will often threaten or actually punish a committee chairman who doesn't do what the party wants.
Yeah.
But during this period, committee chairs in the 30s, 40s, and 50s felt a free hand to not listen to the party leaders. They didn't really care on certain issues.
You know, that brings up a question which I skipped and I'm going to skip, but I hope we have time to come back to it at the end, which is the question of proportional representation and party power in those systems in Britain, Israel, Canada, you name it, Germany, you name it, France, the Scandinavian countries, Italy. Okay, I take it that you would think that because there's so much to be learned, we need a committee system, and that therefore the only question is the extent of power accruing to the committee. Now, what was the effect on the country, if anything, when the committee system was at its zenith, with powerful chairmen operating, as it were, their own fiefdoms?
Look, that depends who you ask, but for many liberals in the 1950s, it was a negative effect. That what happened is these committee chairs, who not only had their own fiefdoms, but they operated in secrecy pretty much. They had all the power of staff. There was no television. There was no C-SPAN. They could take a bill like civil rights and say, civil rights is not coming up for a vote. Civil rights is not going to pass, or we'll put so many rules on this civil rights bill that it will be impossible to ever get through. So for many liberals in the 1950s, the effect of this was to stop the country, to stop the government from moving forward. It was stuck in the 19th century on many issues, and that if you had this system, they said, it undermined kind of the vibrancy of America. And that was the central critique that many liberals said resulted from this.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.